Culver, and I'm with my friend Todd Maffin. How are you today, Todd?
Good morning, Hugh. I'm very well, thanks.
Great. So today we're going to be talking about is digital killing the human touch in your business, and we're going to be talking specifically about his remarkable book called Touch and how this can be used in your organization. And it's going to be kind of a dissection of the book. And quite frankly, I don't know about you, Todd, but I've actually never done this before. So I'm kind of winging it in terms of actually interviewing an author. I mean, I've interviewed lots of authors, but not in this sort of way where we're actually going to, I think, kind of dig deep into what the actual content is and what you've brought to light in this book. The framework, I think, is really fascinating, but also what you're kind of prescribing as far as what organizational leaders should be looking at. And as I mentioned in the prelude, we'll also be getting people involved. So if you're on this call, welcome. And we will be asking you some questions as we go through so that you can tell us a little bit about what's going on in your world. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Todd, at the end you're also going to be offering some gifts. Is that true?
I am so.
Todd is going to be offering one used kilt. So apparently it's in good shape. And it's a size medium, so if you're looking for it, I believe we're going to be getting some free copies of the book being given away. So you want to make sure you stay till the end. That's the teaser alert.
Yeah, absolutely. I think 3 copies of the book, if I'm not mistaken.
3 copies, fantastic. Okay, here we go. So why don't we start with this, Todd? I am always curious, and you did sort of allude to this would be a good question. Why don't you just give us a backstory? Tell us a little bit about how you, I want to hear about how you, I think your .com experience is interesting because it's very relevant to the topic of this book. And then how is it you've moved into actually co-writing this with Mark Blevis?
Sure. And just a bit of background on Mark. Mark couldn't join us today. He's busy running his own. He runs a very busy public affairs consulting firm in Ottawa. And so he and I have been friends for 10, 15 years now. We met when I was working on the podcast strategy for CBC Radio, and I was doing a bunch of interviews around or meetups, really, I guess, around the country to learn from podcasters. So we became quite good friends. And about 2 years ago, Mark was coming out to Vancouver for a blogger conference called Northern Voice. It's a great conference, and I was going to be there, and he was the keynote speaker. And I said, oh, great, it's great to be out here. We should get together. And now I can't do Saturday because I'm going to this How to Write a Book workshop all day on Saturday. See, I'd had this idea for this book in my head for about a year or so, and I've been kind of taking notes. I never really got around to doing it. So I saw this professional organization was doing this workshop called How to Get Your, I forget what it was actually called, but it was something to the effect of how to get that damn book written, And so he said, well, that's funny. I've been thinking about working on a book as well. Well, why don't I come to that? So he and I and my now wife Jocelyn went to this workshop. And Hugh, it was awful. It was It was the guy had claimed to have written 40 books. He'd actually self-published all of them, which is not a big deal. But here's how he wrote his books: is that he basically would write letters to 100 people on a specific topic, ask them to write their thoughts down on the topic, he'd publish it and consider himself a book author. So yikes. So at lunchtime, and I am coming to the end of this story, so at lunchtime, we're sitting down, and Mark says, what's your book going to be about? And I told him, I said, what's your book going to be about? And he told me, and Jocelyn said, you guys are writing the same book, don't you? And as it turns out, we had pretty much the exact same idea for a book. So we decided to merge forces. 18 months later, we birthed this 250-page book.
And I just like to go on record to say this is why guys really need women in their lives, because sometimes the obvious
yes.
is not that obvious to us. And I'm curious though, because it is. And by the way, this book is getting amazing reviews. Mitch Joel, the author of 6 Pixels of Separation and Control-Alt-Delete, says it's a perfect blueprint. David Meerman Scott, who I have interviewed, the author of A New World of PR and Marketing, says it's time to regain humanity in business. Mark and Todd will show you how in this well-written, informative guide. And the omnipresent Chris Brogan said, every now and then a book makes you flip a lot of your thoughts upside down and look at it from a different angle. So, I mean, you come from two very different backgrounds. You know, he's a PR guy. You're a .com guy turned CBC journalist turned entrepreneur again. So, why don't you just, like, as you guys decided to work together, what was the objective? What's this book intended to do?
The book is intended to fix all of the everyday problems that we have with business technology. And here's the sort of the weird way about doing that is that the problem up until now is that the way that we try to fix technology is with more technology, right? And what I think we're beginning to learn over time is that every layer of business technology you add, which does provide a service, you know, every layer you add provides some benefits, but every layer of business tech you add also removes a layer of humanity between you and your employees, or you and your customers, or you and your shareholders, whatever the audience is that you're most trying to reach. Every business tech layer removes a layer of humanity. So we set out to figure out, you know, is there a way that we can help organizations and help leaders in the organizations, or even just individuals running their own business, to still get the benefits of business technology. This is not an anti-technology book by any means. We talk about a lot of technology in it, but we talk about how to implement the technology without removing that human element. And let me give you an example that I think we're all familiar with, Hugh. So you go to call your cell phone company, right, or your cable provider, and of course you don't get to talk to a human being right away. You get the robot, and the robot asks you to punch in your phone number, right, so that it can look up your account number. So you punch in your phone number, and then they place you on hold. Wait, not hold, priority sequence. Because apparently that's different than hold. And then you wait 5 minutes, and then the robot comes back and tells you how important you are to them, and then you get put on hold again for 5 minutes. And then the customer service rep comes on the phone. And Hugh, what is the first thing they ask you for?
Oh, your number.
Your phone number.
Usually say, yeah, what's your number? Yeah. And if it's a credit card company, I know. And if it's a credit card company, they ask for your credit card number, which you already punched in, all 16 digits of it. Which you already punched in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, you know, that's just one example of the frustration that I think sort of birthed this book, is that, you know, we thought there's got to be a way, there have got to be people and leaders and organizations that are using business technology to enhance the relationship they have with their customers, with their employees, and not to put up barricades. So that's what we were aiming to do with the book.
Nice. Why don't you walk me through? I'll just put on the screen the 5 factors of it, and I'd like if you could walk through that, Todd, and explain to me why you chose those 5. And I want to leave quite a lot of time, if we could, for the 7 sections in the book, because each one of them is so instructive, and each one has such juicy stories behind it. You know, the leadership, communications, etc. So. But if you could, like, why don't we start with the 5 factors? Where did you come up with these, and what's the significance of these 5?
Yeah, we spent most of the time in the book working on these. We were trying to identify, were there factors that could help an organization or help a person lead a more human organization. So you know, we spoke to literally hundreds of business leaders and folks and thought leaders to try to figure out. And as it turns out, we discovered that there were about 5 elements seem to be common among all the organizations that are doing it right. So these is what they are, and you've got them on the screen. Obviously, of course, we found synonyms so that it's spelled out touch because it's a lot easier to have an acronym. And by the way, this is it's not a sort of a checklist. You know, it's not a tactical steps to check off a list. These are things that have to become a part of the ethos of your organizational commitment to humanity, human values. So technology we put at the top because, and it might seem a bit counterintuitive, but we did it because the book is still about technology. It's not throw out all the technology. But we thought, we need to stop thinking about technology as a computer. And this is what we found in organizations that were successfully becoming human organizations, is they treat their technologies, their business technologies, as they treated a human. So they had job descriptions for their technology, right? So if you install a new blog platform, you don't just do it with the hopes, I hope that it works. You should write a job description. How many hits do you expect to get on the server? And conduct regular performance reviews of this thing. Is this technology taking too many sick days, i.e. downtime? Do you have a growth and succession plan in place for it when it exceeds its capacities. And in most cases, the answer to this is like no, or I have no idea whatsoever. So, and we're talking, really like annual performance reviews of your CRM system, and invite the people who work closest to it. Ask them to submit performance reviews over the last year. Ask colleagues of the technology to advise on when it needs to be promoted, as in more money invested in it, or fired. And so, we call it a performance review. You can call it a tech audit if you're uncomfortable with the human language, but it's really important to do those sorts of things. So that's part of the of what goes into the technology part. Outcomes is about sort of these KPIs, and I think mistakenly leaders often direct their focus on measuring hard numbers, and they don't. And we all end up kind of drowning in data, right, without really understanding how those activities impact actual humans. So, I think part of the way that you redefine your outcomes is to develop a simple human KPI model, right, of trying to figure out what are we actually giving people, how are they benefiting of it, and part of it is literally your mission statement. Very clear, very simple, to talk about why you do something, not what you do. So many mission statements talk about what they do. Van City, which is the credit union I use, the largest English language credit union in Canada, their mission statement is very clear. At Van City, our vision is to redefine wealth. They talk about why they do something later on, So all of that's really important. So the outcomes is critical. The uniqueness is really talking about, if you want to, like, being unique isn't about exclusively about having the most remarkable product. And that's where I think a lot of organizations make the mistake, is they want to have a remarkable product. And really what you should be doing is spending your effort being remarkable, as an organization as a whole. So uniqueness is about tone. It's about the way you communicate. It's the way you use technology. Clarity, very similar, although we talk about clarity a lot more when it gets into sort of the nitty-gritty of the book, especially around things like legal letters. We've got an entire chapter on the legal department and humanity, and there are some legal ways some human ways to send the same nasty cease and desist trademark letters that you have to send by law sometimes. And then finally, of course, the humanity is in the way that you treat people. And we've got a number of case studies, both from Mark's firm and my firm, clients that we've worked with when clients have been attacked in social media. There is a right way and a wrong way to respond to these people. And we outline what we call the SWARM methodology, which we've been using at my firm for years with clients when they get attacked in social media. And in fact, I'll give you a really interesting example that happened just yesterday. One of our clients, we work with a number of shopping centers. One of our clients is a shopping center in Winnipeg, and they were running a social media contest. And basically, it was whichever photo gets the most likes will win, and they win a donation to their charity. Well, overnight, someone had clearly goosed the results, and it went from 100 likes to 4,700 likes. Almost all of them from foreign countries. So someone had paid, $100 to get thousands and thousands of likes. So we had to disqualify it. But what was important was the tone in how we did it, right? The language that was used, treating people like a human. And, that charity will get a donation anyway, even though we have to disqualify them. So that's really what all of the touch sort of is about in a nutshell.
Nice. That's brilliant. And I want to get some of those examples, like the Jack Daniels example that you just referred to, and go through the SWARM model with folks. And just a quick note, so Rob was asking about recordings. Yes, if you've registered for the webinar, we will be happy to send you a recording of this, and I think that's a great question. Thanks, Rob. So following up on the 5 factors, Todd, there's a self-assessment tool. Can you tell me a little bit about that before we get into the sections?
Yeah, for sure. It's someone pointed out that it sounds really dirty, the touch self-assessment tool, and it's not dirty at all. Although what you choose to do with our book in your own time is your own business. But anyway, no, so the self-assessment tool really is a series of questions that will walk you through each of the 5 things that we just touched on before, no pun intended.
Okay.
And it gives you a scoring system. So you put in, like it'll say, do you do this in your organization, or what level of this do you tend to have in your organization? You score 0, 1, or 2 points. Although, a funny story, Hugh, we discovered literally hours before the book went to press that Mark and I had failed to write the legend, the little answer key at the end, so people would add up their results. And there was no section that told them, okay, if you scored 15 to 22, this is what it means. Like, we completely forgot to write that section in. And it was just by fluke I was reading through it one last time, and I called the publisher in a panic. I'm like, oh my God, hold the presses.
Oh no! Oh wow! Well, where was Jocelyn then? Okay.
Probably not helping, clearly.
By the way, I just want to go back because I was just thinking as you went through those 5 factors, and I actually just have to admit I just tweeted it out, which is very uncharacteristic of me. But I loved your line. We need to stop thinking of technology as a computer. That is the best line so far. Okay, so here's what I want to know before we actually. Let me just go back here to this before we jump ahead. So for the folks that are on this call live, here's what I want to know is, what is it in your organization that you want to start rethinking about in terms of how technology has impacted your organization? So if in fact we need to stop thinking about technology as a computer and think of it more holistically, or as Todd even referred to as, have a job review of your technology. So what is it? Go ahead, type it up in the Q&A. What is it that you want to start looking at in terms of how technology is impacting your organization? Is it customer service focus? Is it the way that employees are using technology? Is it the way that you're providing content to your customers? Or how is it that you want to be on this call? Like, what do you want to be thinking about in terms of technology and how it's impacting your organization? Go ahead and type it in the Q&A. Let's just take a minute to get some responses on that before we jump into the whole breakdown of the book and the seven sections that he has in the book.
And Hugh, I wonder if now would be a good time for us to put up that page where people can win one of the 3 copies of. Do you want to do that now or later?
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Hang on a sec.
Sure.
I have the technology.
Okay. Look at that.
All right,
wow.
So there it is. Okay, so I've got. So the page I just put on display is the offer that Todd's making. If you go to www.bit.ly, so bit.ly / this is embarrassing. Touch
Sorry
Hugh,
about that.
Touch Hugh. So as it sounds, TOUCHHUGH. You'll be able to enter and get a free book. Actually, 3 free books. So Sue, and we'll remind you about that.
I should say that the publisher has only given us iBooks codes to give away. Amazon doesn't provide that to authors. So you have to use iBooks on an iPad or iPhone. So if you have that, no problem, enter away. If you don't use iBooks, if you win, the code will be meaningless and won't work, unfortunately.
Okay, which is how I read the book on
iBooks.
Yeah. So Sue is saying keep the human face-to-face conversations in the work while you're still using technology. Rob says, for us, it's about how to better communicate with technology internally in particular. Nice one. Jeanette says, being ahead of the curve. Yeah, that's very good. Laurel says, obtain better results from our technology spend. Very good. Gunnar says, face-to-face meetings have become replaced by conference calls. Yeah, and that's, a classic example that Gunnar just provided, right, which is where, so we're using technology to kind of be efficient, but it's not necessarily effective. And so people lean towards it because it's easier, but obviously we lose the human touch, right? Like we lose the nuances. Okay, and Eric says, increase productivity and efficiency by leveraging technology. All right.
Even conference calls. We at our company, we've got a conference service. We've got if you're on hold, just to make it a bit more of a human process. I mean, everyone has to be on hold for some part of the conference call at the beginning. So we've got a country and western song that at hold music, and the whole point, the whole lyrics of the country and western song is about how it sucks being on hold and how your friends aren't showing up to the call and how they'll never be there. It's just fun.
That's good. That's right. My dog died. My truck broke. So let's jump into leadership. So in the leadership section of the book, this was juicy because you had stuff from like the whole example from 2010 with Tony Hayward, the CEO at the time of British Petroleum, and the whole fiasco in the Gulf of Mexico. You talked about Peter Aceto, who's I guess CEO of ING, which is now Tangerine. Why don't you just tell me a little bit about what was the sort of the goal and the outcome, and then tell me about Chief Humanizing Officer under this section.
Sure, yeah. And what we tried to do, the BP example perhaps is an exception, but what we tried to do was to use case studies that no one had ever really heard of before. You won't find You won't find Zappos in here. You won't find Dell in here. They're great case studies. Go look at them on the web. Everyone's heard of them. The ones that you'll read about in here are Ontario Transport and Van City and things that people haven't heard before. So Mark spent a great deal of time talking to Peter Aceto and all that around leadership. Really what this section is about is two things. And we put it at the front of the sort of the 7 main areas because it's sort of the foundational thing of humanity. If leadership doesn't buy in, it will not happen. Leaders set the tone, right? Leaders always set the tone for the organization. So which isn't to say that you can't get information and culture from the ranks, but if it's refused at the top. And so we spend really talking about two things in there. One is about very specifics of language. And as we talk to all these business leaders and thought leaders and ask them just a ton of questions, the thing that almost all of them kept coming back to is clarity, very specific clarity around words, the words that you use during important times. So the word "but" as a joiner, in almost all instances can be replaced by the word and it's not as negative. Mark wrote an entire section here around what he calls the anti-I'm sorry or the anti-thank you. These phrases that people use or organizations trot out as apologies, which really aren't human apologies at all. They're like, I'm sorry if you were offended. That's not an apology. You can't be sorry for a feeling I have. You can be sorry for something you did. It's like, if I don't think BP actually said this, but if BP had said, I'm sorry that you feel you were inconvenienced by our oil spill, it's not an apology. I'm sorry we spilled the oil is an apology. So that's partly of what we talk about is the very specific language that we learned from all these leaders that we talk to. The other one is, and it's just sort of a phrase that I'd been bantering around for years, that I used to call the chief humanizing officer. And it is a person in an organization, not at the top. So we're not talking about a Steve Jobs. We're not talking about Tim Cook or so on. We're talking about another individual who has the job to bring humanity into or let people see the humanity in an organization. And one of the examples that we use is a fellow named Robert Scoble, who used to be a developer of Microsoft's products, didn't work for Microsoft at the time. He used to be a developer who used their products a lot. And he was a very outspoken, good writer. He had a blog, and sometimes he wrote things that were great about Microsoft, and sometimes he wrote, God, it's 3 in the morning, I can't get this stupid ActVex to work, I hate Microsoft, And Microsoft hired him, to their credit, and made him their sort of official blogger. And he did not have to go through any PR or legal or executive oversight. He just posted on the blog what he felt, what it was like working at Microsoft. And some days it was great, and some days it sucked. And all of that went up on the blog as well. And so in that way, he became what I would call a chief humanizing officer. It gives people an insight into the organization. And this is especially important, Hugh, when it comes to recruiting. You want to get people feeling that the organization is supportive of them as human beings. They're not just cogs in the wheel. At the CBC is obviously in the news this week. I was, as you mentioned, worked for the CBC for a number of years as a technology journalist. I also wrote their blog, and they gave me complete ownership over the content. It was called, the domain's since been purchased by someone else. It was called Inside the CBC. I wrote it from home in my off time, and I didn't have to get approval. I wrote stuff that was positive about the CBC and stuff that I thought we could have improved on, and it got a huge readership, not for any quality of my writing, but just simply the fact that it was honest. People knew that when they went there, they weren't just going to be getting a PR line, an approved, hey, enter this contest, hey, watch this show. They'd get some of that if they were fans, and sometimes not.
Todd, one of the things that comes to mind, like there's a quote in the book from, this is a, kind of a blue chip player, I suppose, Peter Aceto with Tangerine, and he says, if people don't trust you, all your marketing won't be worth anything. And he talks about being real and authentic. But as I went through the leadership chapter and I looked at some of the examples, and I think you and Mark did a very good job of making this clear, but I thought, it would be easy to sometimes think that being real and authentic means being kind of goofy and WestJet-like and, and casual. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about that. So when we grapple with this whole issue of being a leader that is real and authentic, so that people trust you and don't make fun of you. Like the examples you give of when Tony Hayward opens his mouth, he said he gave his critics and his supporters good reason to shudder. And I love this, like some of the tweets that came out in 2010 after Tony Hayward, at that time the CEO of British Petroleum, some of the tweets were things like, catastrophe is a strong word. Let's all agree to call it a whoopsie-daisy.
Well,
I love this one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, here's the other one. Please do not take or clean any oil you find on the beach. That is the property of British Petroleum, and we will sue you. So this is clearly really making fun of a guy who did not know how to communicate in a real, authentic way. So should we be trying to be goofy and casual, or where is the balance we should find, or how do we find that balance?
Yeah, it's a great question. And just before I get there, one of the more shuddering thing of those tweets that came from people ridiculing the company is that someone had set up in the absence of good PR, someone had set up a Twitter account that was called something like BP PR. It looked like a British Petroleum public relations. It said that it was satire, but everything else looked like it. They were coming from that. So it's sort of it's insightful that.
Yeah, BP Global PR.
BP Global PR, exactly. So someone set that up to mock them, and I think that's instructive because in the absence of you doing it right, someone else will do it right for you and mock you at the same time. But as to your question, I think it's not about being goofy. It's about being true to who you as a leader are, or you as a person is. This is especially important, Hugh, for the people that you work with. You work with a lot of entrepreneurs, 1-2-man shops. You work with a lot of speakers and authors and coaches and do some amazing work with them. And I've always been interested to kind of watch how you instruct them through your various programs, the Speakers, the Academy, and so on. And it's very much in line with this book. We talk. It's not about being goofy. It's about honoring who you are. So let's briefly talk about what a brand is, and I don't want to get too philosophical, but at the very core level, all a brand is a promise. That's all a brand is. It's not your branding. It's not your marketing. It's not the logo. A brand is your promise. So the brand of my company is we promise to do our best job in social media for you and to get you better results than you were getting before you hired us. That's our promise. So the branding has to go around that. In the same way, when it comes to you communicating and being more human, you have to be true to your own promise, if this makes any sense, right? So who are you as an individual? Maybe your brand, maybe who you are, is you are a little goofy. I have a great friend named Mark Smith who does some phenomenal work. He used to be an event planner. He quit that, started up a company called 30 Days Adventures, and he does these 30-day blogging series. That's how he makes his living. And he's a fun, goofy kind of guy. And it works because he's just being who he is. Other people, I worked with a fellow at the CBC who was my boss, a producer. He now runs radio. Chris is a very thoughtful, conservative thinking, very thinking person, and so he has to be true to that as well. So it's not about putting on the cloak of being goofy and trying to pretend to be human. It's about being who you are, and that's hard for a lot of leaders, but you have to do it.
So that's a great segue into communication. Next one. So on communication, you provide a number of suggestions like be genuine, elevate quality over quantity, engage, make your content share-worthy, share other people's content, and know how to measure success, connect the dots. Maybe just pick one of those, Todd, that you think is relevant, and just expand on that for us a little bit. What is it? Sure. We've kind of touched on it already, but what is it about communication that we, as a brand or as leaders, need to be really cognizant of and starting to work on?
I think the most important thing, and communications, our definition in the context of the book, is about literally the communications department. All of these from now on, sort of you'll hear communications, marketing, web, social, legal, HR. We're now into the chapters that are specific to business horizontal, so actual silos within your organization. So these are the communications staff that we're talking about, and so we do talk about stuff like how to form an online crisis playbook, how to build that. But I think what came out of this that I think most people are talking about, at least, is the section that we call the 5 personalities. And it's out of work that Mark has done with his company around the 5 different types of people who will comment on your social channels. And there really are. It comes down to 5 personalities. And I'll give you an example that's in the book. But this is back a couple of years ago. I was giving a speech in Seattle. I was staying at the local Westin Hotel, and as I am frequently want to do, I forgot all my toiletries at home. I do this every second speech I give. I fly out, I leave all my toiletries at home. So I called down to the front desk of Westin, Seattle, and I said, I'm so sorry, I've forgotten a toothbrush and stuff like that. Would you mind sending a toothbrush and toothpaste up? And the operator was very polite. She said, yeah, no problem, $24.99. We'll see you soon. And she hung up. And I went, $25 for toothpaste? So now here's where it goes horribly wrong for me as a person. Instead of trying to think about what that meant, the first thing I did was I went out on Twitter and I banged out this aggressive rant. I can't believe the Westin Seattle is charging me $24.99 for a frickin' toothbrush that the Holiday Inn would give me for free. So 30 seconds later, the Westin main social media channel tweets back to me. I'm so sorry about this. I'm investigating right now. I'm like, wow, that was fast. About 3 minutes later, the hotel manager calls me from within the hotel. This is all within the span of 4 minutes, Hugh, right? So 3 minutes later, the hotel manager calls me and says, I'm so sorry about this. There's been some massive misunderstanding here. The operator wasn't quoting you $24.99 was the price. That's your room number. She said, toothbrush and toothpaste, no problem, $24.99. We'll see you there, as in room $24.99, right? So, so misunderstanding. But I felt, when I tweeted it out for those first 30 seconds, I thought vindicated, right? I hope that my 10,000 followers would retweet that. And that is, unfortunately, one of the 5 personalities. So they are, and of course the book goes into more detail, but they are involved. These are people that are actually concerned about the issue. They know the stakeholders, or they have knowledge of the elements that are there. They're the informed people. So these are people who have taken time to learn more about the issue, and they contribute new ideas to the conversation. But they're not actually involved in it. Then there are the misinformed people. So these are people who've skimmed articles, skimmed your PR, possibly read a post a little bit the wrong way. This is the first level of commenter that lets opinion cloud the issue by relying on their own opinions, if you understand, right? To fill in holes in their understanding. But these misinformed people are not necessarily malicious. Then we come to the uninformed people. These are people who are simply not interested in hearing the backstory, right? They've picked up on a single point in your communications piece, and they've taken it completely out of context. And then there are the angry ones. Sometimes we call these flamers or trolls. All that they're after is there. So what we've got is this chart in there, this table that talks about these 5 commenters and then ranks them on a scale of 1 to 5 based on their engagement, understanding, credibility, logic, and emotion. And you literally, when you get attacked in social media, you can figure out which group you're talking to and speak to them in the language that they need to hear. And it diffuses things immediately.
Let's do this. I just put them up on the screen. There's the 5: involved, informed, misinformed, uninformed, and angry. Let's go up to the Q&A box for the folks on this call. Why don't you type in which one of those 5 groups do you want to get better at communicating with? You want to get better at communicating with, either because it's a thorn in your side, or it's something that just basically slipped through the cracks, or you don't really have a policy around it, or anybody dedicated to it. So go ahead, type it in. Which one of those 5, 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5, just type the number in. Which one of those do you want to get better at communicating with, because you know that it's going to improve your communication quality within your organization. So Rob,
Mark's got such a great, he calls it digital eye contact, which I love.
Oh, yes. So Rob said the involved. Jeanette says the angry. Virginia's number 3, which is misinformed. Deborah says 3 and 4, misinformed, uninformed. Eileen said number 4. So 2, 3. We got Suzanne said 3. Sue said 3. So we got a lot of. It's interesting. I mean, as expected, it's the angry. And actually, it's interesting. It's also not the involved. It's actually 2, 3, and 4, which is the ones that are maybe a little bit more confusing and a little bit more common.
And they require more subtle nuances to deal with, for sure.
let's get on to a juicy one now. Thanks, everybody. Let's get on to a juicy one, Todd. So customer service. So you give lots of examples in here. You referred to some in the intro in terms of how frustrating it is after having punched in your 16 digits of your credit card to have to do it again. So what was sort of the intention here, and what were some of the insights or maybe surprises you found when you and Mark worked on that chapter?
I think a lot of the surprises we learned was that when we were talking to some of these leaders, they talked a lot about loyalty when we asked them about customer service. When we went in, we were expecting that we would hear things about obviously the business technology that was at play, but really what they talked about is customer experience or employee experience. I'm going to use customer, and I mean stakeholder, shareholder, employee. I mean it's whatever, guest in a restaurant, whatever. But what they really talked about was that customer engagement, customer loyalty, and loyalty is slipping, and this is why customer service is going to be so critical in the coming years. It's not that it hasn't been, obviously. Every business since business started, it relies on customer service. But here's where technology is taking us, which is destroying brand loyalty. We've got these all these computers in our pockets now with smartphones, and there are apps out there. Amazon has had one for years, actually, called Price Check. And if you're a retailer, you should be absolutely terrified of apps like this. So here's what happens, right? I go to London Drugs because I need a kitchen mixer, let's say. So I stand in front of the kitchen mixer box. Now, what would I normally do without this business, without this technology? Is I'd look at it. Maybe I saw a flyer. Maybe I've been thinking about it for a while. I look at the products that they have because I'm in their store already. I mean, I'm not going to walk around for hours to look at my options, and I'll buy the one that's closest. Well, here's what's happening now, is people are using these apps. They scan the barcode on the box, and the app will tell them where they can buy that product cheaper online right now. And it's going to get worse because soon these geolocation databases, retailers will have to be in these databases that where they list their products, because right now the apps are saying, here's where you can buy it online. Don't buy it at London Drugs. Walk out the store. Just click here. We have one fine. We patented it, for goodness sake, at Amazon, right? Mm. And that's fairly soon, and they're already working on this. There's trials in the U.S. on these with various apps where it will show you physical bricks and mortar stores. So you go in front of a product, you scan the product with your barcode, with your phone, or maybe you just look at it with Google Glass and so on, and it will tell you a list of places you can get that product cheaper within a 5-minute walk. Technology is going to destroy loyalty, right? And in fact, it's just going to get worse. So I think what will evolve is the concept of a loyalty concierge, where this might be taken on by entirely new, different types of staff. This might be your loss prevention people. But this is what they would do: is instead of looking, or I guess in addition to looking for people who are trying to pocket things, they're also looking for people using these loyalty sniping apps, right? Who maybe they walk up and they pull their camera up in front of a product. Well, that should be as much as an emergency symbol to a loss prevention person as someone putting it in their pocket, because it's as good as a non-purchase. So what do? What does the loyalty concierge of the future do? They rush up to them and they begin offering them things. Hey, we'll take it out to your car. We'll assemble it for free. We'll give you an extended warranty better than those guys. I'll give you a 10% discount right now if you purchase it. I'll take 5% off whatever online thing you see on your phone, right? Anything you can do at that point. And that is where customer service comes in. Sort of a long way of getting there.
Okay. Yeah, and
loyalty, brand loyalty won't exist.
A lot of us don't have, we don't have shelves with products. We're more service based. So, but we all have phone, email, and response forms usually on our website somewhere. And I'm probably missing at least one other, which is common to most businesses. What's kind of a starting point, Todd, under this customer service, better touch focus that people could start on right now? What should they be looking at? What should they be? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. If you're in an organization where you're responding to, and this is more of a service model, if you're responding to a lot of emails, so let's say you're a software developer or something like that, where you got support emails or something. We've all been at the other end of these email systems where you send in a request to support at, and you get this response back that says, you've been assigned ticket number 1247B, and you have to reply above this line, or it's going to cut off part of your text, and and then you get these automated messages for days saying your ticket will be closed. I mean, it's ridiculous. So we talk about a number of tools in there that are really simple. The one that we use at our company is called Support Bee. And I would bet that our clients don't even know that we use that. We have them email a special address at our company whenever they have new content they want. And when one of my team members, the account manager on their account replies, it looks like it's just coming from that person. There's no like reply above this line or anything like that, because what counts is the quality of service. Meanwhile, backstage, unbeknownst to our clients, that is backed by a fairly large-scale ticketing system internally. I see it. It gets automatically routed based on rules, based on keywords that are there. If they say they want something up on a date, it puts it into a calendar for us to post. So it's backed by, this is what I say, the business technology, don't not use business technology, but use it in a way where it enhances the humanity. So, that's one example, I think, in sort of a service business where it's important.
And what's the name of that product again?
It's Support Bee. Support BEE.
BE, like a bee, bumblebee. Support
like a bumblebee. Support Bee.
Okay, good. All right.
Yeah.
So let's move on. I'm conscious of the time here. I want to stay on time. So let's go into marketing. So we'll spend a few minutes on that. So you give in the marketing chapter. It's great. Like you've got everything from biochemicals to the Red Bull with Felix Baumgartner's big drop in 2012. What is it around marketing? I know it all kind of overlaps, but what is it around marketing that you and Mark from a sort of a here's what to look at conclusions you came up with?
And there are, there's lots of things that do really well. I'm a big proponent of retargeting ads. So this is a marketing tactic that you use to get you essentially better quality leads. So someone goes to your website. Let's say that you're a life coach, and so someone goes to your website and maybe they look at your page, maybe they look around your website for 10 seconds and then they leave. You can now, through this retargeting marketing tactic, follow them around the web. So they start seeing content from your website up in their Facebook newsfeed automatically. They don't have to have liked your page. They see your banner ads all over the web. I've been running this on my own site for a while. In fact, I had a friend last year who lives in Saudi Arabia sent me a screenshot of my banner ad that appeared at the top of an Arabic language knitting website about knitting. And she's like, why are you advertising to Arabic language knitters? And I said, I'm not. I'm advertising to you. That's the reason you saw it. No one else on that thing saw it. So there's that. And, also that's the sort of the simple end. And we go all the way to sort of the future. All of these chapters, as you know, end in the section we call On the Horizon, where we talk about 3 or 4 areas where, what you'll be talking about 5 or 10 years from now. And some of that technology is fascinating when it comes to marketing and market research and so on. And we've been, a lot of organizations, especially not to go back to retail, but a lot of organizations have used a system in the past that they call, concurrent think aloud. And so if you're in a grocery store, for instance, and you want to find out why people go down specific aisles, the way concurrent think aloud works is they assign you a buddy. So you walk into the store, and this marketing intern says, hi, would you like to take part in this? We'll give you $50 off or whatever. And then this buddy literally follows you around and asks you everything you're doing. This is the extent that we've thought of so far. So why are we walking down this aisle? I don't know, because I want to get some mangoes, Well, why did you pick this aisle? Well, the sign said mangoes. So what we're moving to is a more human evolution of that, and what some people are called cued retrospective recall, where there's now cameras. This is already happening, in fact. There's very small, they look like web cameras, built into the back of shelves. You don't even see them because they're way at the back. And it keeps an eye on where your eye is looking so that they can build a heat map of where, and we've got a color photo in the book of what this heat map actually looks like from the marketer's standpoint. And then they approach you after you've done your shopping, and they ask you, for $50, sit down, and you begin to then see how your pattern was. Why did you look here? So it takes people to a much more human level as opposed to this kind of following them around. So, that section covers everything from that very, early tactics right through to, as you mentioned, even biochemical responses, heat mapping faces to determine whether or not someone's angry. Banks can use this in lineups.
And when people get to look at this book and they look at this heat mapping of someone in a liquor store, it's actually fascinating and creepy all at the same time.
It is.
I want to bring your attention to, you gave a great example under this marketing chapter that I think a lot of people on the call would really find really interesting, and that is the difference between your experience. And so everybody on the call, let me give you some context. So when you go online and you want to subscribe to a service, and usually there's three choices, right? Because psychologically we are going to try to pick, we're usually going to pick the middle priced bottle of wine, right? So, there's the expensive wine, there's the inexpensive wine, we're going to pick the middle. And the same thing online. There's three packages for this software package or online tool or whatever it is. And in your example in the chapter on marketing, you talk about how, and you actually used Jason Fried's company Basecamp as an example, where the one choice in the middle is not actually the one that you wanted, but that's the one that they make prominent, and they call it premium. But then you said there's another company that you went to that you actually used their service, and tell me what they did differently, because we've all seen the first example. We go on the site, there's three choices, and they say you probably want this choice because whatever, like that's the one we really want to sell you or whatever. But what did the other company do?
And restaurants do the same thing where they put a box around a menu item. And there's nothing special about it. It's just the one they want to sell, and it draws your eyes to it. I can't remember. I don't have the book in front of me, so I can't remember the company specifically.
So it's called Are My Sites Up?
That's it. Are My Sites Up? Yeah. So here, as you mentioned, Basecamp. It's got 3 or 4 pricing tiers. The one that they want you to buy, it says most popular. Maybe it is the most popular. Maybe it's their most profitable. We don't know. But that's the way they spin it. On the other hand, this particular website, Are My Sites Up, does it at a much more human level, and this is really a good evolution, and it's both marketing and customer service, I would argue, in fact, where instead of it saying if you want to monitor 3 sites, it's this, 6 sites, it's this, 10 sites, it's this, and the one that you should get is 6. Well, what do you know about me? I don't even have 6 websites. Why is that the preferred one? So they have a very simple web form that says how many websites do you run, how often do you want us to monitor them, and then it gives you a price. That makes more sense, right? That's the kind of interaction we would have with a human being. Think about the way you'd go in to buy a big stereo system, right? These big stereo stores, the Best Buys, the Future Shops, London Drugs of the world, they don't have 3 amplifiers there, and the person will just say, you should buy the one in the middle. Well, why? Why do I? You go through and you say, I want it to be, I want a small subwoofer. It has to fit here. All of my other appliances are white. I kind of want it to be a light color. And then they walk you through and they say, well, this is the one for you. It doesn't take much.
And what a simple change, right? Because when I look at the example you gave in the book, it's simply the little page is titled, "Let us recommend the best plan. Fill out these few details and we'll recommend the plan that suits you the best, and we'll tell you how much money you can make," or whatever it was, right? And I just think about the people on the call. For those of you on the call, just think about what's on your website. Where is it that you are actually telling the customer what they need, as opposed to asking the customer what might be the best plan for them? And I think that, to your point, Todd, when you talk about going to buy a stereo, it's exactly what we would do if we were live. We would always ask questions, and to me, it's just so much more natural and human, right? So it's really cool.
I have to confess something, Hugh, is that if people go to my company's website, engageq.com, they will see a web page with those price tables there, and we've got them labeled like coffees, large or tall, grande, venti kind of categories. I have never, ever, ever had a single client say, I'll take the grande package of services. I only did that as a way to kind of show off, here's the kind of stuff we do. What that actually does is it gets people phoning in and say, we kind of want this, but what about that? And so every single client of ours is a customized solution. Has to be.
Nice. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes left. Let's go to Web Social as we move along. So you've got lots of examples here, from Shoppers Drug Mart to Ottawa Transit. One of the things you talked about in that chapter that really got my attention was this quote. He says, "It's not that companies shouldn't speak with a human voice. They should. It's that your company should foremost speak in a consistent tone." Can you tell me more what you meant by that?
Yeah, sure. One of the things that often we find with people that are running social media accounts is that they is that many people are involved in that process. So you might have, the marketing manager, the digital intern, and the vice president of marketing, all with access to the social media channels, all speaking in 3 different voices. So there's a couple of ways to fix that, and that's so critically important because remember, that's part of your promise. That's part of your brand, is the way that you communicate. And I would absolutely encourage the single best company, and they do this better than we do it, the single best company that has tone nailed down is a web service company called Buffer. Buffer, bufferapp.com. If you tweet them or email them, they reply. It's not just that they reply quickly, they reply like human beings. So the other day, you check my Twitter feed, you can see this discussion I had with them. There was something that wasn't working right. I couldn't add another person on our team to a client's account. And instead of just saying, thank you, we are investigating the situation, as every other company would do, the tweet reply I got back was something like, oh my gosh, that's awful. Hang on a second, looking into it right now. That's the way a human would speak. So everyone should, after this call, Google Buffer Tone Guide. I think that's the way it is. They've published their rules that they give to employees on how to speak like a human, essentially. So critically important.
That's really good. I'm going to look that up. That's fantastic. Okay, and that's a great segue into web and social, into HR, which is a big one. Now in HR, you did give the example of Buffer, and in regard to actually they have a formula for salaries, which actually you said was really interesting because I found this fascinating. So they have a formula for salaries based on all sorts of different metrics that is transparent, including everybody gets to see what everybody else is being paid, but what it actually ended up doing was attracting more applicants. I think what you said was, you suggested, Todd, it wasn't necessarily so much that they were getting paid a lot. Why was it that actually worked so well for them?
I think what it does is it eliminates that kind of, why are they getting paid more, or sometimes even the suspicions that they're being paid more. And yeah, it's fascinating. They publish their salary criteria. They don't publish people's salaries, but everyone, although they publish their executive salaries, I should say, but everyone knows what everyone else is making because they can just add it up. It's it's how many years have you been in this line of business? That's worth 0.1. How many miles away from our office do you live? How many hours are you expected to work? And it becomes this formula, and it spits out a number, and that's the number you're paid. And it's done just incredible stuff. So we talk about that, obviously, on the HR side. Not all organizations are going to be comfortable with it. But we talk about that kind of open salary thing. We talk a lot about hiring and the sort of the interesting, human-relatable business technologies that are being used to get people on your staff. Flash tweet-ups, which are phenomenally successful in getting people. And then also recruiting and engaging your employees. There's some really interesting products out there. There's one in Vancouver called 7 Geese, a number of them that turn the corporate goal of meeting objectives into a game. And this works with even an office of 2 or 3 people, where as you achieve certain, complete things on a task or you move towards a goal, you get certain points. And it takes this model from the video game world, where after you kill a certain boss at the end of a level, you get 20 experience points, or you get a 500 achievement level points on Xbox. So it's that same kind of gamification. So we talk about all those models and how they really are being used in creative ways.
Okay, I want to come back to something you just said, but in the meantime, in the interim, it's the Tone Guide is at Buffer App, so bufferapp.com/tone-guide, so TONE-guide.
It should be printed out and handed out to all your employees.
It's really good, actually. It's got little, and it's interesting because they start the first line. They actually refer to MailChimp, which we used for a couple of years, which really did have a really neat tone. Todd, you mentioned flash tweet ups. What are those? How could people use a flash tweet up?
A flash tweet up is kind of a new recruiting thing. It originally started with meetups are the tech people's way of saying getting together in real life, IRL. And it's a tweet up is basically the same thing, just announced suddenly. It's almost like a flash mob in a way, where without any advanced publicity, you just suddenly announce on your account that, hey, if you're interested in working for us, at 5 o'clock, we're going to be in this coffee shop. Come on down. And really simple. The agenda should be very simple. One person gives a very informal presentation, no mic, no slides about what the organization is, and then everyone just mingles and circulates, and people, ask questions, and you answer them, and you make appointments. And one of the things that this works really well is gives you really two advantages as an organization or an employer. The first is that if you're trying to find people who tend to be spontaneous and extroverted by nature, those are the people who would attend a tweet up, right? So you don't have to put in your job application, we're looking for people who are spontaneous and outgoing. Well, those are the people who will do it. The other thing is that people, because it's held in a really less formal environment, like a coffee shop or something like that, people aren't as guarded as they would be in an office setting. So we talk about a number of different models in there. Twapplications is one, speed dating, and video questionnaires, and so on.
Nice. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. So we are on to the last one. We've got about 5 minutes left on this call. And legal, you gave a great example of Jack Daniels. Why don't we start with that? Tell me what happened with Jack Daniels.
Yeah, I'll tell you, and then you'll have to remind me to tell you the story of us getting the right to use the Jack Daniels label, which was a whole other story. But so this fellow's name is Catherine Winsing. He's an author. He wrote a couple of years ago this, I guess you'd call it like a satirical novel called Broken Piano for President. And the cover design that he got for it looked very much like the Jack Daniels logo. And in fact, if you have the book, it's on page 236. It shows you the Jack Daniels logo and his logo, and very, very similar in design. So here's how most organizations would have approached it. Because under American trademark law, there's almost an obligation to go after people. It used to be in much harsher, is my understanding. I'm not a lawyer, but that if someone was using your trademark, that you had to defend it, and if you didn't, the absence of your defense meant that it could become available. It's since not quite that mean-spirited, but it's still pretty much. So all organizations would send a mean letter. Take that down right away. Here's what they did instead. They wrote this letter, and the full letter, of course, is in the book, but I'm just going to quote really briefly from it. Basically says, we're flattered by your affection for the brand, but you can appreciate that we have to be diligent to make sure that it's used correctly. So here's what the letter says. Because you're both a Louisville neighbor and a fan of the brand, we simply request that you change the cover design when the book is reprinted. Or, if you're willing to change the design sooner than that, including on the digital version, we would be willing to contribute a reasonable amount toward the cost of doing so. And it's so simple. It flies in the face of all of the other horrible examples. My favorite horrible example is this college student in Tempe, Arizona, who was broke. He's a college student, and he lived beside this garbage dumpster, and he found like about 2 or 3 dozen FedEx boxes. So he built furniture out of them. He took them home, built furniture, because he didn't have furniture because he was a broke student. And he posted these photos, and he built like a table and a sofa and a lounge chair entirely out of duct tape and FedEx boxes. He put it up on a blog. FedEx saw it, sent him a cease and desist. And here's the really stupid thing about that, Hugh. Think about a photo of a 210-pound guy sitting on furniture made from FedEx boxes. Hugh, what does that say about FedEx boxes to you?
Sounds like pretty strong. They're pretty durable.
They're pretty exactly. They're strong.
They're good.
This is what FedEx should have encouraged him to do. They should have sent him 500 boxes, but instead they sent him a cease and desist. Now, very quick. I know we're short on time. Very quick, a 10-second side story. Of course, we needed the rights to use the Jack Daniels label in the book, and they were the single most difficult organization to get the rights to. They only sent they made us first. They wrote a letter that we had to sign, which was very different. Everyone else had sent an email. Sure, that's fine. So they mailed us a letter, printed letter that we had to sign. It got lost in transit somewhere. Then they sent it to the publisher, sent it my way. And it was just an entire quagmire. I'm not certain we still have signed it. I don't know. It's still apparently in the works, even though it's there.
Well,
so a little ironic.
Well, we won't say anything. We got about 1 minute left, and so first, let's go back to that slide, Todd. And this is where people can enter their name and their email, their first name and their email, and then you're going to be giving them the license or the code so they can go to iBooks and they can read a copy of Touch.
If you don't have iBooks, it won't work for you. So it's only for people who use iBook.
Yeah, they can just head over, but they can just, I mean, the book's available everywhere. You can just head over to Amazon and download it as a Kindle, which is, actually what I ended up doing because I was traveling while I was reading it. And so I did it that way, which is great. So Todd, you've covered a lot. So let's get people involved really quickly here. So in the remaining minute, here's what I'd like people to tell us is go up to the Q&A box right now, and what I'd like you to punch in there is, so what is it that you have become more aware of in your organization that you need to focus on? Like, what is it now as you've gone through all of this whole model and all these examples, what is it you are aware that you need to focus on? Is it just simply going on your website and improving the way that you present your products? Is it the way you answer the phone? Is it any kind of recordings that people hear? How about how you respond to complaints? Like, what is it that you would like to get to work on? Let's just see some examples here for Todd as a way of thanking him for being on the call. So just go to the Q&A and tell us, what do you want to work on? What are you more aware of that your organization could be spending more time on or even doing better?
And one question that we often get is people ask us if it's just an ebook. It's not. It's available in every major bookstore right now in North America.
So we got Laurel says, thanks for the seminar. I'm going to reevaluate recording to our service desk helpline. Nice one. Rob said, I want to look more at getting out to recruiting candidates using new methods than we have before. So more in terms of recruiting candidates. And by the way, Rob, there's a great section in there under HR on losing Gen Y employees. We didn't have time to get to, but just in terms of what Todd and Mark pointed out in terms of why Gen Y employees are leaving and what is it that organizations can do to retain them. Marion said writing in a consistent tone. Listen, thanks everybody for being on this webinar. I know it's a Friday, and I know that you got a lot on your mind with probably especially if you have young kids at home for tonight. Todd, thanks very much for making this happen.
My pleasure, absolutely.
And just tell us again, where can anybody get this book? Where can they go to get the copy of the book?
The quickest way to do it is to just go to bit.ly/touchthebook. That'll take you to the Amazon page, bit.ly/touchthebook, or drop into your bookstore. Certainly in Canada, every bookstore I've been into has got at least 2 copies.
Okay, great, thanks. And we will be sending a recording to everybody that's registered. A lot of people can't make it live on the call. I'm going to be announcing in a couple of days my last webinar of the year. So keep your eyes open for that. It's going to be a really good one. And I'll just give you a little spoiler alert. It's going to be about Christmas. Okay, so thanks everybody. Thanks again, Todd, for being on the call, and really appreciative of everybody that took the time to be on this call with us. And good work on the book, Todd. It's a really awesome read.
Thanks so much, and thanks for letting me have this time, and thanks everyone for coming out.
Awesome. And Jeanette says, I just bought it on Amazon. There you go.
Fantastic.
Great. Thanks, everyone.